Greetings, viewers. Welcome to episode 2 of Synths and Suds, a subsidiary of Black Metal and Brews LLC, Incorporated conglomerate. Today, we are going to do something I've never done before, which is review a beer I've reviewed before. Taste change, people change, and Southern Tier's Choklat. I'm not going to call it Choklat, even though jokingly that's what I do. I'm assuming it's just chocolate. Imperial Chocolate Stout here was the very first thing I wrote about on Black Metal and Brews when it was a .blog spot. Pairing with that is one of the first noise tapes I ever heard, which is very loosely noise, which is Time's Arrow by Prurient. That's in its own strange way. Prurient is a mouthful of a word. The more you think about it, the harder it is to say. Anyway, before we get into the tape, although I guess I'll pour the beer just so you can get a look. No, you know what? No, I'm not. I have the post, the original post, which I transcribed and have moved to my .com. And yes, I'm going to read it to you, because I think it'll be interesting to see how it's changed. This is also a very short review. So it begins. The first beer I'm examining is an old favorite, so that I can focus on enjoying my beer while I get through the anxiety of writing about beer. Not much has changed. Life is rough. Southern Tier's Choklat is a sleeper of a beer. It lives up to its name, drinking like dark chocolate milk with hints of vanilla and caramel, yet hides a whopping 11% alcohol by volume. Most beers this strong have an intense taste, or at least a bitterness that hints at high alcohol content. This beer drinks like a candy bar, but without the disgustingly sweet connotation a statement like that might imply. This is certainly not overpoweringly sweet, but rather has a broad variety of flavors that are uncommon in a beer that complement this Imperial Stout quite nicely. Run-on sentences. Wow. A lot of them. Upon first pour, the beer has a slightly foamy head that smells distinctly of cocoa powder. The other flavors present in this drink aren't really apparent from the first sniff, but the head quickly dissipates, allowing the subtleties of this beer to come out from hiding. I'm partial to dark beers and often use this delicious drink to entice friends who don't often venture out of lighter beers or mixed drinks. More often than not, it's a real hit with folks who wouldn't commonly drink stouts. In summary, this beer is highly recommended. It's typically a winter beer, so you may have to wait a couple of months to find it at your local beer retailer. This was written in August. But this is continuation of the sentence, sorry. But we have a liquor store around here that seems to have a never-ending supply. Grab one and share it with a friend, or sit for dessert after a rich meal. I was naive and enthusiastic, and, well, I'm still verbose to a fault, but I'd like to think that I've gotten a little bit better at understanding beer and writing, or at the very least pretending that I have a clue what I'm doing with them. Anyway, now, that was written on August 15th of 2014, or 2012, what am I saying? Today is February 17th of 2015, it's 2.5 years later. Let's see how this beer treats me. I haven't had it in over a year. And let's see how this tape treats me, although I already know how I feel about it. If you're not familiar with Prurient, one of the biggest names around in noise, power electronics, industrial, etc. And Time's Arrow is probably the sort of thing that pisses off noise purists, but was enough to help reel me in. So, take a look at that. I don't know about a foamy head, first off.
I heard that Elizabeth Short came back to Los Angeles.
It's pretty thin, although it's stable.
But she still had a secret.
That body is dark, though.
She told me.
Look at that color.
Now,
That's good.
smoke reverses back into the cigarette.
The cocoa powder's absolutely there. Very strong dark chocolate coffee aroma, which At the time I thought this would be uncommon in a beer. I've since discovered this is very common in a beer. And you know, it's funny because I've grown to have a pretty strong dislike of chocolate stouts at this point. I never really liked chocolate, to be honest. And it's interesting because I don't really feel that I like chocolate stouts, but this guy's doing it for me, or gal, or other. This is genderless, it's beer. Sorry. It's good. Is this revolutionary? Would I say it's my favorite stout at this point? Probably not. This is definitely like a special occasion beer. Given that, you know, Synths and Suds is relatively new, I wanted to kick it off with something, you know, a new beginning, so a new approach to something I've had before. I think I'd like to do more of these. It's interesting. That head definitely went away quick. And I feel like I could see this getting overpowering over time. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like how I came to the Victory at Sea Porter a handful of videos back. It used to be one of my favorites, and it's still good, but there's an intensity to it that makes it much more of a special occasion thing, whereas I used to be drawn to a sweeter flavor, to something different, unique, and off the wall, which I still am to some degree. I'm always hunting for a new experience. Obviously, that's the whole point. You want to do something new. I don't feel that candy-inspired beers are going to be the key to that for me as much anymore, which is totally fine. In a way, even though craft beer was a passion of mine from pretty much the time I turned 21, you know, like anybody, tastes change. Dessert was never the thing for me. When I was a kid, I'd want seconds of dinner instead. You know, if especially it was savory or salty, oh my god, those are my things. So it makes sense that what appeals to me about this now is actually the bitterness. There's really more of a hop characteristic than I would have given this credit for, you know, when I first reviewed it. I tasted the malty, I tasted a bitterness that I attributed to dark chocolate, but there's also definitely a slight kick of hops in the back end of this, and it's actually nicely balanced in that regard. It's not overly thick, but there is a slight syrupy characteristic, and if anything, it kind of pairs with the sweetness there. Not necessarily working against it. I might like to have either, I don't know, you know, either a purely dense beer or a thinner beer. It's kind of in the middle, and it's a little odd to me. Not bad, just odd, processing it in a funny way, I guess. The caramel that I perceived a while back, not really there today. Could be a different bottle, could be a different year, could be a different me. It's really hard to say. I would absolutely recommend drinking chocolate. I recommend pretty much anything Southern Tier does. But Southern Tier, especially with their flavorful beers like this, it's not going to be for everybody. It's intense. That's the whole point. It isn't just, you know, a chocolate stout. It's a stout brewed with chocolate. Because of that, well, you know what you're getting. This is a fun beer to have. It's a fun beer to share with others. Because a whole bottle of this to yourself, for me, would be too much. For you, this may be heaven sent. Take a second to talk about Prurient before we call this over. Prurient started as pure harsh noise. I'll admit, I'm not even familiar with the majority of Prurient's earliest catalog, simply because some of it is so abrasive that while I can appreciate it, it's overwhelming in a way. And I do enjoy my share of harsh noise, but Dominic Furno's a sick guy, at least in terms of the music he makes. Albums like Cocaine Death, however, fantastic noise piece. I was first introduced to Prurient really through its inclusion on the Around the Dragon's Broken Neck Hangs the Middle of St. Lazarus 2-tape compilation, which I don't own because it's impossible to find, but I've heard thanks to the internet. And I was intrigued. I looked them up, found the Bermuda Drain album, from which this is of the same sessions, and immediately it made sense to me, and I was able to kind of process more of the back catalog, as well as, you know, keep up with what they've been doing. Stuff like Washed Against the Rocks is also incredible to me. I know New Prurient has a lot of hatred within the noise community, but I feel like as far as an electronic piece goes, this is great. Just that motion, that percussion, it's constantly driving. I used to work at a coffee shop in Tampa, and I kind of would have free reign of music sometimes, and this is a great song to work to if you've got a job that involves a little bit of physical work, you know, especially making coffee or cleaning the cafe. There's a real sense of just kind of darkness, alienation, but it's all, like walking through the city streets and just, you know, being completely surrounded by strangers. They're all walking by you. Nobody's looking at anybody. You know, very much that kind of sort of disconnected ruins of society and pain of modernity sort of thing that you'd see in like The Matrix or something. Just very, very compelling song here, though, with a focus on both a text with which I'm not familiar, and the story of the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short. Just a very interesting song, very interesting take. The B-side contains some reworked versions of songs from the Bermuda Drain. If you're not familiar with this, I recommend familiarizing yourself. And thanks for tuning in. Time for the remix of the same song. Cheers. Next time you see me, I'll likely be doing something even more unconventional than this. Stay tuned.